I want to retweet.
All right, I think we're good to go. What's up, guys? How you doing?
What's up?
So I wanted to do this because my whole life, everybody's been telling me you gotta play Castlevania. You know, it's like the greatest game. There's even Metroidvania is its own classification of video game. So I figured I would play it myself and then just talk about it and kind of feel like, or get a feel for where it stands in the whole scope of video games. Um, so I have footage playing down below for anybody that's, just to show the game. It's just from World of Long Plays. I link to them down below. I hope this doesn't count as stealing footage because I think if you link to the channel, hopefully it's promotion and not theft. Sorry, but I figured we would start about talking about the hardware to play it on, and then kind of go from there, and also include people in the chat that wants to talk about it. What do you guys think?
Sounds great, Bob.
Sure. I'm just confused. What are we talking about? Specific Castlevania? Are we talking about the whole series? We're talking about Symphony of the Night. Just Symphony of the Night?
Just Symphony of the Night, yeah.
Oh,
and I
okay.
do realize I was playing the Rondo of Blood music when we started this, but I like that music better, so whatever. So basically, I never liked Castlevania games, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the NES games, while they were groundbreaking and phenomenal and we needed them, they don't hold up as well as some of the 16-bit and up games. Best example being, of course, Metroid. It was amazing and groundbreaking and changed a lot of different things, but I would go back and play Zero Mission now. I would never go back and play the NES version. So when I was telling everybody about Castlevania and everybody's making fun of me that I never liked it, they said, you need to play Symphony of the Night. This is like one of the best. You gotta go back. So the first thing I did, because I wanted, being the stupid nerd that I am, I wanted to try all the different ways to play it. So I popped the original disc into a PS3, and it looked like garbage. Didn't matter what I set it to, didn't matter, 720, 1080, whatever. It was really, really, really disappointing. So then I downloaded the PlayStation Network download of it, and it looked way better. To the point where I would say that if you only own a PS3 and you don't own like an open source scan converter or anything else, it's a perfectly good way to play the game. But if you already do own the open source scan converter, I would actually say go buy a PS1 for $20 or whatever, because it's that much of a difference. I was telling Zach before we started the stream that when I first turned on my OSSC, I didn't realize it, but I'm playing through the game, and my buddy Carsey, I gotta put a link to him down below, he helped me transfer the file from the PS3 to the PS1 memory card, which was super easy. So I picked up right where I left off, and I immediately was blown away at how much better it looked on original hardware through the open source scan converter. And then I realized the OSSC was only on 3x mode. So when I turned it up to 5x, it was that much better on top of it. So, yeah, definitely, if you're going to play on a flat screen, original hardware through the OSSC. And, of course, I played a bit on the BVM, which, in my opinion, for all of these games with the jagged edges, just looks phenomenal on CRTs. So that is obviously the preferred way. But
I also remember, like, what they made one for Xbox Live Arcade. They made a port. I have no idea how it looked. I just remember that's an outlier out
For
there.
Xbox 360?
Yeah.
I wish I'd known. I would have tried that one.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's any better.
I just want to say something, and you're totally entitled to your dumb fucking opinion, but I would just like to say, I think your opinion, being that it is your own, is probably like the 2% of people in terms of their own perception of this. Saying that the original games, as groundbreaking as they are dated, is akin to somebody saying, well, now that Mega Man X has come out, I'll never go back and play Mega Man 1 through 6 on the NES because they're so incredibly antiquated. I don't feel like those Castlevania games are antiquated and shouldn't be revisited just because there are newer installments. I think the paradigm of the gameplay may have changed, but I think those games are still, with the exception of Simon's Quest, Castlevania 1 and Castlevania 3 are fucking outstanding. How dare you?
I gotta admit, when you said you disagreed, I thought you were about to talk about the hardware on how he played it. I'm like, oh no, motherfucker, I will go, I will screenshot the shit out of these. No, I think you're right, and that is 100% just my stupid opinion. And there are lots of games, like DuckTales for NES is amazing. I still love Mega Man 1 and 2, and you're totally right. I wouldn't stop playing that because Mega Man X is out, or even Wily Wars, the redid version of that. I just think that certain games, and Metroid is definitely where I'm holding steady on this opinion. If you go play the game mechanics of the original Metroid versus Zero Mission, like way better.
Yeah. Okay. I'll yield to that, but I don't know. I think that those games, my opinion, Castlevania 1 through 3 have aged tremendously well in their art direction, in their gameplay, in their beautiful knockback. I think those games should absolutely be enjoyed or at least sampled by people in their original incarnations. I think even today, as antiquated as they may seem, there's a lot of challenge and fun difficulty still presented through at least those two titles. In my book.
I have a friend who just got into Castlevania for the first time. I mean, he's had Nintendo and all these old games. Grew up same year as me. Never really played Castlevania, and just recently got really into it, and played through Castlevania 1 and 3, and absolutely loves it.
Really?
Yep.
So maybe then my dumb opinion on this has nothing to do with how well the game's aged, and it's just simply that I'm not really into that type of game. Because I also played it on the TurboGrafx, the Rondo of Blood. And first of all, I was blown away at how good it looked. The music was amazing. It looked freaking incredible. But in my opinion, I got an hour into it, and it was walk right, hit some candles, walk diagonally left up the stairs, walk right again, hit some candles. Hey, there's a boss. I can't really figure out the boss's pattern, so I just whip and run and whip and run. Level 2, walk right, walk diagonally left. So that's probably maybe I'm just not into that type of game. But that is not at all how I felt when I started playing this Castlevania, the Symphony of the Night for PS1. The first thing I noticed is that it did that very stereotypical of the early 90s thing where, the opening took forever. Just like in Super Metroid, one of my favorite games of all times. You gotta sit through a lot. There's a useless boss battle that doesn't matter, just like Ridley in the beginning of Super Metroid. Oh, by the way, I should just say that there's gonna be a shitload of spoilers here. So let's just let that be warning to everybody watching.
That's okay, Bob. I think you're the only one who has finally played this game.
I think so too, but that's exactly why I wanted to do this, because so often my opinions are based on things I've replayed, and this is all fresh. So like the actual game mechanics, the jumping, the way you hit things, there's no complaints about that, but it took a little getting used to, especially how certain weapons, worked different than others. I thought that was a huge win. I loved the map system in it. It's you don't have to guess. You could kind of see where you're going, and but there's a few things that I didn't understand right from the beginning, and I accidentally stumbled across that metal glove right in the tower in the beginning, which was really powerful for a weapon at the early part of the game, and it changed.
I know what you're talking about.
Everything.
The jewel knuckles.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
But basically, No, in every weapon I got after that for like the next hour, when I went to equip it, it was less powerful than that. So
Yeah.
I went around punching everybody in the face for the whole couple of things, and that's the first thing that I got disappointed about in this game is on a game like Super Metroid. Every time you got a weapon, it was more powerful than the last, or in the case of the ice beam, it kind of got on my nerves, but it had a very specific use, and you could disable it if you didn't like it. So, what are you guys' thoughts on the weapon?
I like the fact that there's all sorts of crazy things you can get and all these drops, and that's actually like the real essence of the game is that they merged Castlevania lore and side scrolling and all that with JRPG elements. And I just think that you're just not a general fan of that type of system where you have choice of all these little different things. And hey, maybe you want to just have fun and throw these knives instead of doing tons of damage with your fist. And that's up to the player to decide what they want to do. But it sounds like you want a more structured, like, hey, this is useful, so this is the only thing you should get at this point in the game, and there you go and you have it. I think it's a totally different style of game they're trying to do here.
I think that the style of game that Symphony of the Night became, a lot of people said that it's this Metroidvania where it's just as much about it's a game that's as equally about exploration than it is about actual hand-to-hand combating. I don't think so. I think this formula, Konami, this whole explorative formula, Konami was working on in the mid 1980s with a much older Castlevania title, Vampire Killer for the MSX. That game is exactly the same architecture as Symphony of the Night. Only Symphony of the Night is just, it was modernized for, the tail end of the 20th century. I think that what makes Symphony of the Night so appealing is what Steve said. The lore of Castlevania and sort of that whole universe was really intertwined into the gameplay, and I think that it just the lore is what really made Castlevania Symphony of the Night a very deep experience, and all of the places you visited in this tapestry of a castle. That's just my opinion. Put it in me next time.
So I actually agree with both of you. So Steve, I think my complaints just might be that maybe this isn't the best style of game for me to play. And to move on to the next thing, Zach, that's actually the thing that I really enjoyed about this, is that there were so many games that were fetch quests that, like, I always make fun of Skyward Sword, but I mean, that was about as blatant as it gets. Like, okay, the game could be over now, but we want you to go collect a bunch of things that really have nothing to do with nothing, and it'll take another 4 hours. Like, I don't feel at this point in the game, and I guess I should say that I think I'm at the end, but I haven't beat it yet. And at this point, I didn't feel that way. There was the very Super Metroid-y times where I couldn't go any further. I found a boss I couldn't beat, and I just went, you know what, I got the bat. So let me just go back and fly to all the places I can't jump to. And then I did that and went back to the boss and beat him in like a minute. Which I think is a good thing, not a bad thing. Because, you had to explore. You had to get sucked into it. And from that, and I loved the teleporting thing. I thought that was really cool. I didn't realize that was part of this game, and that's what everybody stole it from.
Right. Right.
So, the one thing though, so the first half of the game in the castle, I guess you would call it, right? I really liked everything that I found. It wasn't until yesterday where I swung by and met with Carcinogen SGA, Carcy, one of the great Twitch streamer, a buddy of mine. And when we did the memory card swap, he's like, all right, let me just play it for a second and make sure it works. And he does the jump where you shoot straight up in the air, and then he re-equipped something else and like was able to do all this cool stuff. And I immediately got pissed. Well, actually, my first response was, holy shit, this guy is so much better at video games than I'll ever be. I mean, he's a professional Twitch streamer, I should hope so. But my next response was, how would I have ever have known to have done any of that? And that brings me back to the only times that I cheated and looked it up, where you have to buy the thing from the library to open the blue doors. Definitely not clear about that the first time I found the thing in the library. And was a few other things where, like the 2 rings to open the clock. Like I would have never figured that out on my own. I did cheat for that one, but it was after I had already found the rings, just because I went to all the different spots that I couldn't have gotten to before. Do you guys have memories of your first time playing it and the frustration? Did you have to like go to school and cheat by talking to your friends? Was there a magazine, or did you guys just figure all this shit out?
I remember just eventually figuring it out. Like this seemed pretty in line with games back when in the day when this came out. That whole 2 ring thing, I'm pretty sure you would have eventually figured it out. It's not that difficult to piece that together. You got like little blank spaces missing on one piece of text and the other one, and then they line up and then they spell out exactly what you need to do. I don't think it was that difficult. As for the other parts where you're saying like the different moves that you can do aren't always described, I actually really like that part of the game where you accidentally do something and then you're trying to figure out what you did. Like you saw you did like a special move and you're like, what the hell was that? I didn't know you could do that. And then you figure it out and you eventually learn these new undocumented moves. And then you're like, wait, if I could do a Hadouken with this sword and do this crazy rapid attack, what about all my other swords? And then you start equipping all your other swords. And
I didn't even know. Can you actually do that in this game?
Yeah, with different weapons, there's different moves you can do. There's mainly like a Hadouken, and there's also like a kind of like a Guile Sonic Boom, but you don't have to hold down back for a few seconds, just back forward and attack. And usually those 2 moves have some sort of effect on some of the weapons. And I again with the spells, like I bet you the first time you like accidentally did Dark Metamorphosis and you're like, what the hell was that? And you go to your spell list and it shows you how you did it. I really like things like that. I thought it was interesting, in my opinion. I don't know.
Well, the reasons, I just have to say the reason Steve probably finds that so interesting is, though he was able to do them by accident, unfortunately, Steve's never been able to do those on command. Because when he was over here, we spent, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 hours just trying to do this goofy ass exploit to get to a ledge in Symphony of the Night. And we had no life. We had no life HP built up. So we were just exploiting the hell out of Dark Metamorphosis, but Steve could never put it in.
No, Soul Steal. I would pass the controller to you. I'm like, do the Soul Steal for me. I'm about to die.
And I literally be like half asleep. I mean, I would fall asleep watching him. It was that beautiful. And I would just like put it in, and I'd hand it right back to him. And he's like, thanks a lot. So, but to your question, though, back in the late 90s, my brother had this game, and I really didn't. I watched him play it quite a bit for hours and hours. But 20 plus years ago, it was a very deep game from my perception, and it was a game that I wouldn't go and personally visit myself until truly play the game until it became available. Really. Maybe 2002 or 2003 is when it really became more appealing to me when I was in high school, or right when I was before getting into high school. So it was a later it was a much later experience for me. But just about everything I didn't look up. The one thing I know I didn't look up, and again it's a spoiler, are when you face Richter, in order to defeat the Dark Priest Shaft, you have to collect something. I didn't cheat for that, but almost everything else, though, I feel like I did cheat.
I got the game right when it came out. I remember Final Fantasy VII just came out, and me and my brother played through that, and then when this came out, I actually enjoyed this way more than Final Fantasy VII. And I was trying to convince people at school that this was more enjoyable, and I had no luck until I let them borrow the game, and then most of them agreed with me. They thought it was a fresh experience, because it really, there's Metroid, but it had the Metroid elements of exploration, but everything else was kind of like unique in a side-scrolling type adventure. Like the leveling up and the equipment, that was my favorite part. I thought it was the most unique part of it, was leveling up and equipment. So you got those two basic JRPG elements in there that made it the most interesting for me. Because
it seems like this game is trying to be, in a good way, trying to be a cross between a side-scrolling adventure game and a role-playing game.
Right.
It's like, you know what it is? It's a modern version of a Vampire Killer for the MSX, which is exactly the same architecture, and it's like that game mixed with what was the Sega Master System game? It was a Wonder Boy game, but it was a very explorative.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I never played that one.
I played the shit out of it. I know the name of it. I'm just having a brain dump. But at any rate, the people, there's this consensus that Konami really broke ground with Castlevania and did something really different. They really didn't. They did this 20 years before, but it was on a very sort of niche computer in Japan, and nobody had exposure to that. But this is really an old Konami formula that would very well may even rival Metroid when it came out for the Famicom Disk System. So I just think that it's important that people realize that Konami's been doing this stuff. They did this decades before Symphony of the Night ever came out, and I just think it's it's amazing that they were able to take that beautiful art style and that they sort of made this tapestry of Castlevania lore, and they meshed it into a brilliant gameplay. And I think the gameplay is great. The RPG elements are great. But I think what really sells Symphony of the Night for me, or all those things, but most prominently, was the art style and just sort of the ambiance of all of the environments. It's kind of like Super Metroid for me, where you felt totally isolated, but you were like, you were there. I kind of felt that way with Symphony of the Night. And also when you got the familiars, like, your little fairy, something you probably use a lot, Bob, or your other little.
Or I didn't know how to, or I don't know how to use it or something.
Well, when you pick those up and you have a companion with you, I thought that was brilliant too. I thought that was fantastic.
Oh, like Clippy in Microsoft Office?
yeah, pretty much. But you probably have them, Bob, but you have to go into your relics menu and turn them on.
Okay, I'm gonna mess with that then.
Because they're all in the regular castle. You should have all the cards. It's called like fairy card, ghost card, demon card, back card.
Right.
But I mean, I think this is, well, I mean, I don't think this is exactly why I wanted to talk this out, in a podcast style discussion, because talking this out really made me realize that's kind of the genius of this game, right? Is I am an adventure side-scrolling game fan where I like the open world exploration thing, and I don't even know any of these role-playing elements exist, and I still enjoyed the shit out of the game. So isn't that a massive win for them? I mean, if somebody that's just approaching it from my point of view still really enjoyed it like that, I mean, that's kind of awesome, right?
Yeah, that's actually, I got a lot of friends who would stay away from like the Final Fantasy turn-based JRPG stuff.
Yeah,
I get them into this type of game, and they all like it, and they end up playing all the GBA ones and DS ones.
So I have an opinion, and maybe you guys will change my mind, or maybe you'll just blame me for it. But up until the point where, and once again, guys, spoilers, where you meet and then have to beat you have to go in and you beat Richter. So it's the end of the first half of the game, I guess you might call it. Overall, I would say that I loved it. I had a few little gripes, had to look some shit up, Some things probably because I wasn't smart enough, others because I wasn't patient enough, whatever. Excuse me, I get that. Overall, I could have just, I mean, I would have walked away raving about it and saying, I get it now. But now, it almost felt like Konami, or the developers went to Konami and said, what do you think? And they said, that's great, where's the other half? And they went back and went, all right, let's just turn the castle upside down and put 1,000 more enemies in there.
So you feel like the inverted castle was just filler, Bob? Do I understand that correctly?
It's starting. I haven't beaten the game yet. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I'm very close to beating it, but I did not get that sense of wanting to explore, and so many of the rooms are jam-packed with enemies that are not fun to beat. So I end up flying as the bat over everything in almost the entire second half of the game. It's not a fun battle. Do you have to beat all of the bosses in the second half in order to beat the game?
Not all of them. You just need the Dracula parts, and certain ones have the Dracula parts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but
so maybe I'm not as close to beating it as I think, actually.
you're never going to beat anything, Bob. But what my question is what do you consider beating the game? Because there are a bazillion different ways.
Okay. That is an excellent point. And I guess the only reference that I could make, because it's just my favorite game, is if you beat Super Metroid in 15 hours, you get the worst ending, but you have still completed the game. So that I still would count that as beating Super Metroid. You don't need to beat it in under 3 hours to have actually completed the game. So I don't need the best ending. I don't need to find every secret. I don't need 100% completion rate. I just want to feel like I saw the game from start to finish and then judge it based on that.
Okay. I understand what you're saying.
So I think you just need to fight the last boss. I mean, there's 2 different endings based on your percent complete. Mm-hmm. But it's just like a little story thing. It doesn't affect like the fights at the end of the game. It's just what happens after. And so it doesn't sound like you're into a lot of the whole Castlevania thing. Another thing I really liked about this game, sorry to squeeze this in here, where it had a lot of fan service. Like if you played Castlevania 3, you're like, oh man, I'm Alucard. I was this guy. I was in Castlevania 3. And then like when Maria talks to Alucard in the chapel area, it's like, do you know Richter Belmont? There's like a little thought bubble, and she has a picture of Richter in her head.
And it's the best thing.
Yeah, and then because Alucard knows Trevor Belmont, so he has like a little 8-bit Trevor Belmont. Oh, the Belmont clan? Of course. And I just like little things like that. And then there's a boss in the inverted castle that has a throwback to Castlevania 3 as well. So there's and the Castlevania 4 bosses at the end of the game. Those guys make their appearance in there, as the first boss in this game. It's just like little things like that. You're like, oh man, yeah, I love this part. I love these guys from back in the day. That's another like thing that makes Castlevania fans like this game.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the frustrating things that's just popped up on the screen now is the books in the library and the table and chairs. I would get so annoyed at how these inanimate objects would just end up whooping my ass. And I was always down to 10 health power, and then a table and chair would, come up and whack me.
You know what I was so annoyed by when you get through the library and you go talk to the librarian to buy his wares? He's sitting on his little thing, but
there's the hole behind him. It looks like you can drop down.
And it looked, I tried so many different ways of getting into that and penetrating the librarian's rear, but I could never do it. And it was just a memory you brought up for me. That always annoyed the shit out of me.
Well, you use that jump and you just go, and he gives you a thumbs up, doesn't he?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I think is there anything that I'm supposed to not forget to buy at the library, other than, of course, the thing that you have to buy to open the blue doors?
That's the only thing you have to buy at the library is the Jewel of Open.
So what's all that other crap that's there? Is there any of it that's actually very useful and,
There's some decent weapons, probably not anymore that you're in the inverted castle, but there's a cloak you can get that you can make it whatever color you want. There's you can
Is there
sell
anything
items.
that you could buy to replenish your hearts? Because one of the things, all those bosses that was starting to really annoy me, because there was no pattern. It wasn't like in Super Metroid where you figured out to like get caught and then use the grappling to electrocute them, or like Crocomere where you have to just do the jump, run back, jump, run back. I couldn't. There was a bunch of bosses that I could not figure out any pattern at all. So what's the secret weapon that's just like the cross?
That's really super cheesy. Like you
Yeah.
can cheat the shit out of.
Yes.
There's, it depends.
I forgot what it's called, but it's the one, where you have it as your. Oh, and the one thing I got to add here, holding up and pressing, like your fire button in order to do that. I accidentally fired that thing off so many times it annoyed me, and then you waste 100 hell or 100 hearts when you do it. But
Oh, you're using the Holy Cross. Yeah, I never use the Holy Cross. I'm more of a holy water guy, so I never run out of hearts.
well, the Holy Cross thing, you just
Yeah.
if you're aimed correctly, you could annihilate the shit out of the bosses. So
Yeah.
I got 200 and something. So in the upside down of a couple of the bosses that pissed me off, I'd run underneath them and do that twice in a row, and that would be it. But is there something you could buy, a potion to replenish all hearts, so I could cheese out and just beat the bosses that way?
There's a item you could get called a heart refresh, but if I recall, there's only a few in the game. There's an item you can buy at the shop. It's called the duplicator. It costs tons of money.
The duplicator you get at the library?
Yeah.
Let me write this down.
But I don't know. I don't know when it shows up in the shop at the library. But then you could use an infinite amount of anything that has like a quantity associated with it. It lets you use an infinite amount of.
But if you get is it Alucard's that you can get that with every step that you take you recover MP, isn't there?
I think there's something for MP. There's also a cloak that I think damage that you take. Yeah, you get hearts.
Yeah, I got that one. That one's helped a lot. That one, it used to be, imagine walking around in Super Metroid and trying to replenish your health by one at a time. Like that's what it felt like for the hearts until I got that cape, and then it was 3 or 4 times as fast to get all the hearts back.
Now, Bob, just not to move on beyond Castlevania Symphony of the Night, but now that you've experienced this sort of gameplay, does this, now that you've experienced this and you've got a taste of what sort of these games are, does this excite you for the new Shit Stain of the Night game coming out by the same guy? Are you excited for that?
I want to come back to that because that's what I wanted to close on. I just wanted before we get there, because I definitely want to talk about that. I've covered got to be 75% of the map of the Upside Down Castle. I haven't beat all the bosses yet, but I'll go back. I'll try to buy the duplicator. Somebody in the chat said it won't appear until after I beat the game, though, which sucks.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to find a way to beat all the bosses, I guess. But I guess what else? Is there anything else to expect? Is there any other thoughts or something like that? Or, like if I could give a Breath of the Wild tip, I would say make sure to practice that shield dodge thing that you learn at the beginning of the game and then never use. Like you need that to beat the game. So like, is there something like that in Symphony of the Night?
The only thing I would suggest to you is, you kind of indicated that you're skipping over a lot of things that you're not interested in fighting. But having said that, I think it's important that you still farm and grind up your level so that you're strong enough so that when you do get to the actual in-game content, that you can play it reasonably well and comfortably and not struggle and want to throw the controller down.
I think you should instead of being your main approach being to use the Holy Cross, I think you should look through some of your weapons and try doing some special moves with them and see which one have really nice moves. I know there's some like seemingly weak weapons, but their special move is really awesome. And I don't know. I guess, do you know how to do the soul steal?
Nope. Somebody in the chat was just talking about that too. So
that's really useful for getting health and like Zach pointed out earlier, when I kept dying when trying to do that stupid exploit.
I just wrote that down as well. Soul steal.
Yeah. you could just look it up, what the command is to do it. Otherwise, back in the day when you couldn't look it up, I think you could buy scrolls from the librarian that they just put that thing in your spell list in your menu. But once you do it the first time, it automatically goes in your spell list. That's like if you accidentally do it. This was what I was talking about earlier.
Okay.
If you accidentally do a spell, and activate it, it'll show up in your spell list, so you can reference it later.
All right, good tips. So learn the Soul Steel. The duplicator is expensive and might not be able to get till I beat the game. And then just learn, or like go through and read what I have in my item list. Maybe just look it up online and see which ones I could use to do other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you can look them up, or you could just like start equipping some stuff. Like the one thing is the shield rod. If you equip the shield rod with a shield and you press your square and circle at the same time, you do a special move and it changes on each shield you equip. So you could do some crazy power ups.
Yep. Mix and
Shield,
match.
rod, and shield.
Yeah.
This game is not only about exploration, Bob, but it's also about experimentation. And knowing you're someone who's experimented a lot in your life. You should really put that sort of in the focal point of your mind. Experiment with weapons. Try to do things that don't make sense. And more than likely, something cool is going to happen. Like, right now, you should... Never mind. You should type ICUP. But...
that would be cool.
Yeah, you should type ICUP, Bob. That would be cool.
So, probably tomorrow, I'm going to go into the office and try to finish the game on a D32, just because I'm a fucking nerd. Why not? Why wouldn't I want to do it that way? We got a couple of those Bose desktop speakers, which if there's an audio file in the chat, I know Bose isn't the best, but I'm just saying it's not a junky piece of desktop speakers. It is at least better than a piece of crap thing. So I'm going to go try to finish it that way and really just enjoy the rest of the experience. Overall, though, complaints aside, I would definitely play this game again, which is more than I could say for a lot of the games that I've been playing. I think the only games I've played in the past, new games that I've played, would be, that I would love to replay, is like Ori and the Blind Forest, as well as I actually bought Axiom Verge on the Switch, and I just got one of these. So that'll be the game that I play after this, and at some point... especially if there's ever like a really good port of Symphony of the Night somewhere, then I'll definitely play it again. But if not, maybe I'll just replay it a year from now. On this,
Yeah, the Saturn version. The Saturn version's what you want. That's what you should have made the first go. Hey, man, don't knock the Saturn version. Yeah, the aspect ratio may be a little skewed. Yeah, it may have some slowdown where it wasn't poorly coded, but. Listen, there was a lot of cool features with the Saturn version, and I personally love the Saturn version.
I can't tell if you're serious or not.
I'm dead fucking serious.
So maybe the next time I play it, it's the Saturn version then, just for the fuck of it.
Maybe
I'll test out the Satiator with Symphony of the Night when that's released.
I mean, there's more. You have a few more items. There are more areas. You have Maria, which is okay, and Alucard. You can or Richter. You can be those guys right out of the gate. So if you, I guess, with sort of appealing to that, and subsequent ports that do that now too. But with the Saturn version, if you didn't like the deep combat, I guess, with Alucard and having all those Japanese RPG elements, you could play as Richter, and really, it's an old school Castlevania game with the theme of Symphony of the Night.
Okay. So that will be. I think you guys have just. Set the future test in stone. Then, when Professor Abrasive's Satiator comes out, that is how I'm going to be testing that. I will play Symphony of the Night on the Saturn on an RGB monitor.
Yeah, it'd be good.
There's actually one other thing I wanted to mention. Like, I don't think this game is a perfect game. I mean, I do have some complaints about it. I think it's too easy, way too easy, in my opinion. And I agree with you with the inverted thing, feels slapped on, but I don't think it's for the reason that you thought. I think it was more of like, hey guys, we can give them even more playtime if we did this, not like, oh, we need to add this. And I think it's a different motive for for them putting the inverted castle. It was a great way for them to double the game area with a little bit of effort. And the other thing I wanted to mention is this is the first game where I noticed glitches while playing on PS2, well, actually any non-PS1 hardware. This most notably for me is when in Ulrox's quarters, the moon in the sky gets all jumbled up in any non-original PS1 implementation that I've seen. I don't know. I just thought it was worth mentioning.
So I wanted to ask you guys about that because I've only now played it on the PS3 and the PS2. Tomorrow is going to be the first time I'm actually going to play it on a PS1. And the only thing I noticed was that, and maybe this could just be the room I was in, but once on the PS2 I got really bad slowdown in a room with a shitload of enemies. Is that just because I was in a room with a shitload of enemies, or was it PS2 specific that happened?
If I had to guess, I think it was just shitload of enemies. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's too many sprites on the screen. Yeah.
Well, to go back to what you had started saying before, Zach, that is actually something I was going to ask you guys anyway, is where to go from here. I know Woozle's going to be putting out his Game Boy Advance HDMI kit very soon. And I think I would like, now that I've played this, I think I would like to use a Castlevania game to test it. I think I'm actually going to play through Zero Mission first, just to test. And then I'll beat that in a day, and then I'll go back and really sink into it. And what I've read about the 3 Game Boy Advance Castlevanias are, the first one was a lot longer than this one, but pretty good, more of a role-playing feel. The second one had god-awful music, and actually, maybe we could figure out some kind of MSU1-like audio replacement. But anyway, I was also told it was way too easy, that the whole game was almost, it almost felt more like a playable story, because people who aren't even great at video games could play through it without dying. Yeah. And then I heard that the third one was as if somebody had taken Symphony of the Night and made it even better. Like it was just a perfect, the perfect side-scrolling Castlevania. Is that the truth? Is that not the truth? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I don't have much experience with the Game Boy Advance games other than when Steve forced me to buy Circle of Moon, which was one of the best decisions ever made next to marriage and divorce. But the Circle of Moon is an outstanding, worthy successor to Symphony of the Night. It's almost all of the glory of Symphony of the Night, even the deepness in gameplay, but it's handheld. And to do that back in the early, that's a launch title, is it not? 2001?
I think so.
Yes.
Game Boy Advance. To have that in the pocket of your pennies in 2001 is pretty amazing. So I think Circle of Moon is a fantastic game. The other Game Boy Advance titles I can't really comment on. The Nintendo DS titles I can comment on. I really, other than the criticisms of the second Game Boy Advance title, I mean, I've sampled them all. I don't think any of these games are bad games in any respect.
So you brought up the DS. That was my next question, is because in the 1 minute of Googling in my middle of the night insomnia on my phone, the only things I found next was the 3 Game Boy Advance. Are there more side-scrolling Castlevania games?
There's 3. There's 3 more for DS.
Yeah.
Okay.
The same style of Metroidvania type.
And it's amazing because you've got the dual screen, so your top screen can be your whole map in real time, and your bottom screen is where the action is, or vice versa.
Can you flip them?
Aria of Sorrow. I can't remember if you can flip them. No.
I don't think so, especially on the first one, because they used a lot of touch elements.
Yeah, you had to draw your symbols and runes and shit, but I don't think you can on that one. But they're all amazing. I thought they were all really, really good. I've not beaten them all.
Well, the reason I was asking about swapping is because one of the things. Hold on, I don't want to pop this. Sorry, I don't want to pop a beer in everybody's ear. One of the things that I have that I plan on holding on to is the Nitro DS capture box. So it's that blue box that allows you to play commercial DS games, and you could select the output. And one of the things I was trying to rope you into, Zach, eventually was modding that thing so that you could, you basically I would take a DS and only have the bottom part, the bottom screen and the controls, and then connect it to this thing, and then have the top screen output go out to an RGB monitor. So essentially, like you're playing on the screen, but when you need to look down, you're still holding the DS. I would love to play through one of the Castlevania games with that once it's all solved, just to have a pretty neat project for something.
No. I'm just kidding.
No to which.
I could give you my opinion on the follow-up games. I also agree the second Game Boy Advance one, I hated it. It was a chore for me to play through that. I don't think any of it was good. The music is especially bad, like everybody says, and the sound effects. If you have to play that, if you're in a torture chamber and they're gonna go between waterboarding and this, go for the waterboarding. But if that's all they have, just play it with the sound off, because it's that bad. And like I played the third one, the Aria of Sorrow, and it's the most like Symphony. Like when I first played it, I'm like, awesome, this one's finally like as in depth with equipment as Symphony is. But then looking back, I really like Circle of the Moon. That's why I made Zach buy it. It has this really, for somebody who likes classic Castlevania, you're a whip wielder in that one, which I like better in my opinion, and also it has this really arcadey feel to it, where it kind of like mixes Mega Man X elements into it, because you're dashing, you're jumping off walls, and you're doing all this fast movements that for me is way more fun, and the music in it is, I think, the best out of the three in that for Game Boy Advance, because it remixes a lot of classic music, and it's got some really nice original ones as well.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody in the chat just brought something up, and I'm glad, because I had completely forgotten to talk about this. They mentioned why not play it on the Wii U, and I had played through New Super Mario Brothers on the Wii U, and the lag was awful. I ended up having to take the Wii U into the other room and hook it up to an RGB monitor and component, and played through in 480p that way. And at the time, I had a Panasonic Plasma in variable lag, but averaging 2 frames, which is not terrible at all. So whatever the lag is on the Wii U for a DS game, it's got to be bad for me to have noticed it. I mean, it made some of the levels in New Super Mario Brothers unplayable. And then as soon as I stuck it on a BVM, now there's no added lag. So I'm assuming maybe there's 3 frames of lag on the DS emulator on the Wii U. But I would have liked to have done that. That would have been a perfect solution, because of the big-ass Wii U controller and everything. But yeah, have you guys messed with that at all?
No, Bob.
I don't have a Wii U. I'm really behind.
It's so fucking funny when I mention stuff like that, because everybody's like, why would I fucking play the Wii U? But that thing had so much potential. And
yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I just haven't been keeping up to date with games at all.
Okay, yeah.
So
me either.
Is that pretty much it then? We've covered that I should go with the Game Boy Advance games afterwards, and then start with the third one and go from there, and then try for the DS games after that.
I think you should go. The wonderful thing about playing Castlevania games, especially the DS and the Game Boy Advance titles, is the chronology is irrelevant. Try them in any order that you'd like them to. There is no sort of, well, there is story continuity in a sense, but you're not missing or spoiling anything for yourself if you play the third Game Boy title first, and then the first Game Boy title last.
The only thing is that the third Game Boy title and the first DS title are in order.
Right, that's true.
That's it. Everything else out of all 6 of those, besides those 2, don't matter.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yep. But that's pretty much it. I mean, it's a wonderful franchise. The first games to me, I still hold them in very high accolade. Symphony of the Night was a beautiful game, and it lent itself to really what I think Castlevania Symphony of the Night did the best was that game style was proven with Symphony of the Night, and it lent itself to the last place I ever thought it would, which was the handheld platform. And thank God for Symphony of the Night, because that game really allowed some very deep games come to life on handheld systems. I just winner all across, boys. Winner all across.
Well, I guess I haven't beat it yet, but as of now, my final conclusion on this is I really enjoyed it. I understand now. I truly grasp why people use the name Metroidvania. It still makes me cringe because it's still that combining two names, fucking, Benifer thing to do. I got to think of something for you and Steve. Would you be Z? Would you be Stack? Voultar? I don't know. Anyway, it's all that stuff's vomit worthy to me, but it is absolutely worthy of the name. I love that keyhole transport thing. I thought that was really ingenious, and I didn't realize that this is where it stemmed from. I do feel like because it was one of the first to do that, I don't want to use the word overrated, but I do think it gets a lot of hype that is not fair for something that was one of the first of its kind, the first to put everything together like this.
Right.
But I was honestly expecting to not like it. I didn't think it was going to live up to the hype. I thought it was going to be one of those games that took forever, and I'm very pleased with it overall. So
That's what matters to me, Bob.
It might not be the best game, but it's enjoyable. I think over a wide audience, I think it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for talking this out with me. I'm really glad we did this because I feel like anybody who's played this game might, if maybe they like to hear our opinions, they'd probably like to watch this. But I feel like any retro gamer that hasn't played this game yet might benefit from hearing this and understand what they're getting into. I think if I had listened to this before I'd started playing it, I probably would have approached it a lot differently, and I might have had a hell of a lot more fun with it. Combining weapons and messing around with stuff like that. So,
yeah,
I think you probably would have flipped the table from all the spoilers.
This is also true. So, apparently, a good name for you guys would be Steetar.
Yeah, that's fine. Steetar.
I like that. Steetar. All right. So, Bob,
can we add a D to the end of that?
Steetard.
I actually like Steech better.
Yeah, good luck pronouncing that properly.
I know that's the whole point. Steech.
Sounds like a Saved by the Bell character.
Yeah.
If Zach and Screech from Saved by the Bell, that'd be perfect.
Okay.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for doing this. Thank you, everybody that participated in the chat. It was really a last-minute thing, so really happy that we did all this, and I will not forget to save it this time. So take care, and we'll see you guys in 2018, I guess.
All right, guys. We'll see you next year.